Hi bookish friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be using my brand new TBR jar to help me pick out my July TBR. Alright, so I recently made this TBR jar right here, and then I added in all of my physical books into this mug. So I'm going to pick some prompts first from my TBR jar, and then I'll pick some other random books from this jar. So hopefully this will help hold me accountable and get through my physical TBR. Alright, so I do mostly tend to read audiobooks, so I don't know how many of these I will actually end up getting through, but I think this is a really good way of helping me choose which books from my physical TBR I'd be interested in reading. I always have such a hard time picking my TBRs every month, so I think that this will help simplify the process. Alright, so first I'm going to be picking from the TBR jar. I'm going to be picking 3 prompts from this one, and then I'm going to choose some books either from my physical TBR or from my audiobook TBR for these. And if I double up picking a book for one of these prompts that I get from my physical TBR jar, I will just pick another book from the physical books mug. That way there's no overlap going on. Okay, so without further ado, let me see which one I'm gonna end up picking. I'm gonna go for one at the bottom. Okay, so I picked one out, and let's see what it says on this one. Okay, so it's prompt number 43. It says, a book written by and featuring BIPOC characters. Okay, so I definitely have a bunch of those on my physical TBR and on my audiobook TBR. So maybe I'll pick a physical book option and then an audiobook option in case I don't have time to read the physical one. All right, so the physical book that I picked for this prompt is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This follows 16-year-old Brie Matthews, who goes off to this basically magical boarding school, and she joins this secret club called Legendborn and discovers that she has magical powers and is trying to figure out what to do with all of that. Meanwhile, she's also learned that her mother didn't die by accident, so she's trying to look into her mother's death. So she has to try to decide if she's going to infiltrate this Legendborn group to try to figure out what's going on, and it sounds super interesting. I know that a lot of people really love this YA fantasy series. This is the first book, and I believe there's 4 books out currently, so I can't wait to dive into this one. Hopefully it'll be one that I get to in the month of July. I've had this book on my TBR for so long that it seemed like a perfect choice for this prompt. Alright, so for the audiobook option, I'm gonna go with Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan. I've been in a really big romance mood this entire summer, so I think it'll be one that I will end up picking up. It follows Hendrix, who's a very successful entertainment entrepreneur. She has her own business, and she is dealing with a lot of challenges in her personal life. She is dealing with a family member that has dementia, I believe, and so she doesn't really have time for love. But she bumps into this tech mogul named Maverick, and they unexpectedly start falling for each other. It has a lot of themes of ambition, of love, of responsibility, and finding joy in the midst of so many obstacles in life. I think it's really interesting that she is a career woman and that she has found that relationships don't really work for her in the past, but she's willing to give it another try. They have a really strong connection from the first meeting, and so they both have to figure out how to balance love and ambition. It has a very strong focus on the dating life of a Black woman, and I think it'll be a very interesting read to dive into. I believe both of the main characters are a little bit older, so maybe in their 30s or their 40s, so they are very established adults, and I'm excited to read a more mature love story. I think this will be a really nice one to dive into, and I can't wait. Alright, so it's time to pick another prompt from the TBR prompt jar. So let's see which one I'm gonna end up picking from here. I'm gonna swish around a bit. I'm gonna go for one near the bottom again. So this is one that I've picked out, and then I'm gonna read what it says. All right, the prompt that I picked out is number 19, a book with stars on the cover. This is gonna be a little bit of a tricky one. I am definitely gonna be giving myself a physical book option for this one, but I don't know if I'll be able to find an audiobook from my list that has stars on the cover, but I'll definitely be taking a look at my physical books and my audiobook collection. All right, so for this prompt, I only had a few options, but I had 4 options to pick from. So I'll show you each of them, and then I'll tell you which one I'm gonna go with. So first I have astronautical. This takes place a century after the explosion of a planet, and brothers Max and Larry and their father have to deliver goods across the galaxy when their father is suddenly kidnapped by an all-powerful star, and the brothers go on a very wild and crazy journey through space and time trying to get him back. They're trying to figure out the secrets of this broken planet, not only to save their father, but also all the people on the planet of Zephyr. And so it seems like it's a sci-fi graphic novel, and I think this could be a really cute and interesting one to read. Not only does it have stars on the cover of this one, but there's also a star in the plot of the story, so this could be a really good one to dive into, and this would be such a quick read, so this is an option. We also have The Lost Book of Hours by Haley Joel Fuso. The stars on this cover are a little bit more subtle, but they are there, and this takes place in 3 different timelines, in 1938, in 1949, and 1965, and basically this girl is hidden by her father in a library where all past memories are stored in books, and she has to kind of travel through the memories of those who lived before her, and she's trying to to salvage the past and create her own book of lost memories. And then in 1949, we have a timekeeper who offers her a chance at a second life. And in 1965, we see a girl named Amelia who's mourning the death of her uncle and guardian. And she's told about the existence of this time space, which can only be accessed by very specific watchers, but the government is kind of trying to destroy all of the past history. So this sounds very interesting, but it is kind of inspired by World War II events. I know it has like a fantastical take on that, which is a little different, but I just finished reading The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and that was based in World War II. So I'm not sure that I'm ready to pick up another World War II historical fiction this coming month, but I am still intrigued by this one and very curious about it. I just don't think it's gonna be the pick for the month. All right, another option that I have is The Space Between the Stars by Amy Pienaar. This is an indie published book, and it follows Max, who is pregnant at 17. She's trying to cope with all the tumult that comes with that and navigate a relationship with her best friends. And she's been navigating abuse from her adoptive family. She decides to finally hook up with her childhood best friend, who she has loved forever, but it leads to a lot of complications. And then she decides to go to a party and ends up sleeping with her biggest bully or nemesis named Lance. And so now she doesn't really know the paternity of the child, and she's facing a lot of torment. But once the child is born, the baby goes missing, and we have to figure out why. It is a little bit of like a mystery thriller book, which I am trying to get more into that genre. So this is a definite top contender for this. I'm just a little bit concerned about the length of the book, so I'm gravitating more towards picking a graphic novel. The final option is For Daybreak. I don't know how to say this author's name, so I don't want to butcher it, but it follows Marcus and Cog. Marcus has a crush, and Cog really has no idea what's going to come next, and they're getting closer and trying to brighten each other's day. They're in their senior year and come from two different friend groups, but they start hanging out together, and Marcus starts making lunch for Cog, and Cog starts walking with Marcus home, and so they begin to see each other in a little bit more of a romantic light after that. And they're both a little bit reticent in their characters. Marcus is very wholesome, and Cog is easily overwhelmed, so they don't know when they're gonna get together, but they're just taking things slow. It sounds just like a really cute, slow burn contemporary romance. I am excited to dive into this one, and it is an option for this prompt, but I don't think that I'm gonna end up going with this one. Okay, so I'm gonna end up picking astronautical for this one because I think that it's gonna be really easy to fly through. I like the sci-fi aspects of it, and it's been a while since I've read a sci-fi story, so I think this will be a really fun one to dive into. Plus, a star is featured within the plot of the story, so I feel like that gets me bonus points. All right, so I'm gonna be picking one more prompt from the TBR jar. All right, so I'm gonna be picking, I'm not looking, and let's pick one, this one right here. Why not? Ooh, it's a long one. A book that was translated from another language. I have a few of those, so I'm gonna look through which ones I have that were translated, and then I'll show you some physical book picks for this. I don't know if I have any audiobooks for this, so I'll check those out and see if I have any options for this. But I'm gonna scour my bookshelves, show you some of the options, and then let you know which one I end up picking up. All right, so I also had 4 different options for this prompt. The first option I had was for We the Casetas by Aurora Venturini. This was translated from Spanish by Kate Maur, and this one is a gothic novel about a gifted Argentine girl who travels the world trying to find meaning and dealing with a lot of the hardships that women in the 20th century face. Shell is born to very wealthy parents who resent her spiritedness, and she seeks a lot of love wherever she can find it. She becomes a guardian, a confidant, and a partner in crime to a bunch of different animals, and as she ages and as she gets older, her academic success is matched by her rebelliousness. She is heartbroken during an affair with an older man and seeks solace in drugs, travel, and making friends with a Chilean man. They visit Easter Island and fall in with an eccentric group of French aristocrats, and she is inducted into the mysteries of an ancient sect of druids. She loses her family home. She goes on a quest to better understand her roots in Sicily, and she goes on a second-grade love affair with her great aunt, and they find a lot of alarming discoveries along the way. This sounds like a gothic novel that has some psychological aspects to it. I think it'll be a really interesting one to try out, so I'm curious about reading this one. The next option is Deep Breath by Rita Alas. This is a recent addition to my collection, and it was translated from Hungarian by Chris Herbert. And this one follows Vera, who feels like her body and her mind are on the precipice. She has just left her marriage and her 2 young daughters to live with her father after her husband's violence has reached a breaking point, and she's feeling a lot of symptoms of loss of consciousness, insomnia, and difficulty eating. She's facing a divorce, and it's about her kind of coping with life after this and trying to re-find herself in the process. In the following year, she reignites a high school romance. She looks to her divorced parents for guidance. She tries couples therapy and struggles to be a good mother. Also, she develops a substance misuse dependency on cocaine, and she tries to re-engage with her artistic side. All the while, she's really questioning her marriage and all of that, and she's trying to decide whether she is going to go through with this divorce or whether she should stay married and fight through it. So the concept is that it's her trying to learn how to breathe again after being in this very toxic relationship. Again, this is another one that sounds very intriguing, one that will be a very difficult read, but a very powerful one, I think. So I'm really on the fence. This is one that I definitely could see myself trying out. Another option for this is The Resting Place by Camilla Sten, and this was translated by Alexandra Fleming. It follows Eleanor, who walks in on the scene of her grandmother's murder and comes face to face with the killer. She suffers from a medical condition that makes her unable to recognize faces, and with every passing day, her anxiety mounts. She has dark feelings about being brushed by the murderer and not being able to identify him. So this is affecting her perception of reality. A lawyer calls her, and her grandmother has left her a looming estate in the Swedish woods, and this is where her grandfather died. The house has had a very dark past for over 50 years. Eleanor, her boyfriend Sebastian, and her aunt Veronica, and the lawyer all go to uncover the truth. But the closer they get to finding the truth, the more they wish they didn't. This sounds like a very eerie haunted house thriller story. It might be a little bit overwhelming for me to dive into this one, especially since I don't read a lot of thrillers, but it does sound intriguing. I think I just might be a little bit spooked by this one. So I don't think I'm gonna pick up this one right now, but it is one that is on my radar. All right, so my last option is Red Queen by Juan Gomez Jurado, and it was translated from Spanish by Nick Caster. And this one has been compared to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, so that made me curious about it. And it says that Antonia Scott is special, very special. She doesn't work for law enforcement, she's not an investigator or anything like that, but she's solved dozens of crimes. It also sounds like she's a little bit of a recluse. She lives alone in an apartment in Madrid, and she doesn't often leave her apartment. So she hears these unknown footsteps coming up towards her apartment, and she doesn't really know who it could be, but it sounds like a very eerie story. I am curious about how this is all gonna play out. There isn't much more said about it in the synopsis, so I don't know anything else about it, but it could be a really good read. I don't know that this is gonna be the one that I dive into in July, but it is definitely one that I want to keep an eye on. All right, but I think I'm gonna go with Deep Breath by Rita Alaz. This is the book that's translated from Hungarian, and I just think it's going to be a very powerful and poignant read. I'm really curious to see how this woman navigates her abusive relationship. I think that it'll be a difficult one to get through, but one that will stay with me for a long time. There weren't any audiobooks that were really calling my name for that prompt, so now I'm just going to pick 3 more books from this physical TBR jar, and I'm not going to force myself to read them all physically. If I find myself needing the audiobook to do a tandem read or to do a combination of physical and audio, I will do that. So I'm not going to restrict myself to only reading these physically, but I do want to get these read, so I'll pick 3 from here. All right, so there's so many titles in here. I'm going to just dig around and feel for one. I have a couple in my hand. I'm just gonna grab one. I think I just have one. Okay, let's see which one this is. This is Farewell Blues by Maggie Robinson. Okay, so I'm gonna find it on my shelf and then I'll show it to you guys. All right, so this is the book. It says it's set in 1924 England, so that sounds interesting. And it sounds like it's a historical mystery novel, so that's also intriguing to me. It says that Lady Adelaide Compton has prepared herself to say goodbye forever to Detective Inspector Hunter, and it would be a relief to not get mixed up in any more murders. However, she's going to miss working with the handsome detective. But then her mother, who is the Dowager Marchioness of Brofton, is accused of murdering her secret lover, and there are not enough gentlemen detectives to figure out the real truth. The dead Duke of Rufford appeared to have a very spotless life, but looks can be deceiving. So Addie and this detective have to work together once again to save her mother from hanging, and this sounds like a very intense read. It's giving me a little bit of Miss Scarlet and the Duke vibes with the historical like murder mystery aspect to it, so it sounds like something that could be really up my alley. I don't read a lot of mysteries, but I do like that this has some historical aspects, so this could be a good bridge into the genre for me. All right, so I'm gonna pick out the next title. I'm just gonna dig around in here. I think I've got one. All right, let's see which one this is. All right, it says Real Americans by Rachel Kung. All right, so here's the book. This was a book of the month pick for me, and it looks like the book is a dual timeline story. It starts in New York City, right on the precipice of Y2K, and it follows a 22-year-old unpaid intern who's working at a media company, and she meets a man named Matthew. He is confident, poised, and the heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. She is the only child of scientists that fled Mao's Cultural Revolution, and she was raised in Tampa, so we'd love to see a girl from Florida Florida, and she has no money, but despite their differences, they are falling in love. And then we're also taking place in 2021, following a 15-year-old named Nick Chen, who feels like an outsider in Washington Island, where he lives with his single mother, Lily, and he can't shake the sense that she's hiding something. So he's trying to find out who his biological father is, and this leads him to more questions than answers. It sounds like an intriguing story of class, of family inheritance, of race, and navigating all of these things. Nick is trying to learn more about his biological father in this one, and we're going to really delve into Lily's past. So I think that is really interesting. I like that it's two modern timelines and you're kind of comparing them both. So we're seeing Lily's past, and then we're also seeing her from the present day as Nick is trying to learn more about his father, and so we're kind of uncovering things as we go. I really like the kind of narrative where things slowly unfold. I believe The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna had a similar concept, and I really enjoyed that, so hopefully this will be one that I really end up loving. All right, so now I'm gonna do my final pull. So this is gonna be the final book from my physical TBR. Okay, let's see. I'm just digging through. Okay, I think I've got one. And let's see what this one is. This says Vera by Carol Edgarian. Okay, let me go look for that on my shelf. All right, so this is the book right here, and then let's see what it's about. Oh, okay, so it looks like it takes place in 1906 San Francisco, so it's another historical fiction in a city leveled by a quake and fire, and it follows an indomitable heroine who's coming of age after the catastrophe. So we're following Vera, who is the 15-year-old illegitimate daughter of Rose, who is the notorious owner of San Francisco's most legendary bordello, and she's allied to the city's corrupt politicians. Vera has grown up in two worlds, within the madam sphere with tickets to the opera, surly henchmen, scant morality, and she also has to deal with the violent domestic life of the family that's paid to raise her. On the morning of the great earthquake, her worlds collide, and the city shatters and burns. Looters are fighting the injured, orphaned, and starving, and Vera and her sister Pi are set adrift. She disregards societal norms and prejudices and begins to imagine a new kind of life, and she collaborates with her former rival to form an unlikely family of survivors, and they navigate their way beyond the disaster. I think this story is going to tackle a lot of themes like sex and class, how to move on after a natural disaster, and how you pick up the pieces from that. Also, it sounds like she's really looking for a different kind of life, so I'm curious to see where that's gonna lead her. She's only really known this one way of life, so I'm curious how it's all going to play out in this one. All right, so these are the 6 books that I have on my TBR for the month of July. I had a really great time using the TBR jars to help me pick out these books, and I feel like I picked out some books that I wouldn't have necessarily gravitated towards or gotten around to anytime soon, so that's super exciting. I think that this is a really great way to help me diversify my reading a little bit and get through my physical TBR, and I just really enjoyed this so much. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. What are some books that you're looking forward to reading in the month of July? Have you read any of these? Do you have any thoughts on them? Please leave them down below if you do. And of course, wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you're doing well, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye!